Truth in Plain Sight, bringing truth to light in unbiased, nonpartisan, factually founded reporting worldwide.
Started. We are going to sing "O Canada" because we are proud Canadians, and it is Canada that we want to change first.
So we're going to ask everyone just if they'll stand up. And ready?
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, our true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Go ahead.
And we'd like to just say a quick little blessing before we get started. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
Thy will be done,
on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day,
our daily bread,
and forgive us our trespasses
and all our sins.
and all our sins, as we forgive those who trespass and sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Please bless everyone that is here. Make sure that everyone gets home safe, uneventful drives home. And for everyone who is watching, please bless them and know that they are in our hearts as we stand here today. Amen.
In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Well, guys, so, this is the first time in about 2.5 years that I've ever put any effort into organizing anything, and I'm so grateful for the team that we have. So, from Spalding Music and Ed Janisek and Chris Black and Richie and Simone and this wonderful location, and Lamont Daigle, and I want to say thank you all so very much, because without people like you, we'd be nowhere in this entire movement. So a round of applause for everybody, and I'm going to do this again when it's all over at the end. But we've got quite a lineup.
We have a great lineup for you tonight. Some people will be joining us virtually, and some people have graced us with their presence because they're in the GTA area. So without further ado,
let's invite our first speaker up. He is one of the most renowned doctors, especially over the last 4 years.
Yes.
He's been fighting, especially standing up for the families and for children. And
for all of you who are very much aware of what's going on in the movement, you will know that this gentleman has been advocating for the children and giving us information on the vaccines. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Chris Shoemaker.
Thank you, love.
Thanks, brother. Hi, everybody. Hello. All right. Well, we've got quite a crowd here. We're in the west part of Toronto called Etobicoke. Those of you who aren't in Toronto don't know that the K is silent, but it is silent. So we're here in Etobicoke. Yeah, right on. And thank you so much, Kellyanne, and thank you so much, Jody, for organizing this fabulous event. We're in your debt. We all thank you, people who want to understand what's safe to do, what's best to do for ourselves politically and the like. We're going to do our best to tell our part of the story. Now, I'm a physician, so I'm going to stick to my medical area. There are plenty of other people who will talk to politics and how to keep ourselves safe in that regard. But medically, I just invite everyone out there in television or video land as well to think about this question. I'd like you to think that you're going to listen to 5 little stories. Each one's going to be about 2 to 2.5 minutes long. And I'd like you at the end of the 5 stories to just ask yourself 2 questions. Is ivermectin safe or not? Or is the COVID-19 vax safe or not? And I'll just give you these 5 historical stories because they're not made up. They're completely real. Everything I'm going to tell you is things that I've learned over the last 2.5 years from hearing other experts speak. So let's go ahead, but as we do so, let's retain some sympathy for everyone. Let's retain some sympathy for ourselves who have gone through so much. Let's have sympathy for those who have been lied to by their government and have been coerced into taking shots of questionable safety and of questionable effectiveness. Hopefully at the end of my talk, there'll be no question as to how safe or not effective, in fact, that they are. So the first story came out of Great Britain. It was out of the United Kingdom. It was a study done in 2021. They were busy giving shots to everybody in 2021, but they weren't giving it to the children yet. So in the fall of 2021, the United Kingdom did a double-blind, random-controlled study to figure out, can we count on this vax to be as helpful to children as it is to adults? So they got volunteer parents throughout the United Kingdom to volunteer that their children receive the vaxes, even though in the wider population it wasn't available yet. And thousands and thousands and thousands of children got the vax in those 6 to 8 months of 2021. The vaxes were made mandatory for children by the fall of 21 before they opened up the envelope and found out what the results were going to be. They started giving it to children before this experimental phase was even completed or the numbers looked at. So in January, February of 2022, the Department of Statistics in the United Kingdom opened up the envelope expecting to see a wonderful little, 10 or 20% benefit for getting the jab. They were just tickled pink. They were looking forward to opening that envelope. When they opened up the envelope, they found that the death rate per 100,000 children was still at roughly 0.33 per 100,000 children. But the death rate for the vaccinated children in the cohort, those who had received 2 shots from ages 11 to 14, 2 shots in the space of 4 or 5 months. And the children who had 2 shots were 8,200% more likely to die in the numbers. There were children 82 times more likely to die because they'd been vaccinated. That was what was in the envelope when they opened it up. So that's a scientific and a statistical fact that you weren't told, because the government of the United Kingdom does not tell its own citizens that fact, so that they would have informed consent, so that parents would know all you will ever do to your child if you give your child these vaxes is make them 82 times more likely to die within the year than if you had done nothing. So that's my one little historical, factual story for you to ponder. My second one is a personal story of a Dr. Jackie Stone. She was a person from Australia, a doctor from Australia. She got a little tired of Australia, her home country. She wanted to go to Africa to practice medicine, and she did. And she practiced both in Zimbabwe and South Africa. And when COVID broke out, she had an imminent and a quick sense that ivermectin was going to be highly useful. She was an ICU doctor. She worked in intensive care. It was her job to save people who were fading away and who might die within 5 hours right in front of her. And so they chose, because it was not illegal, they chose to use ivermectin even for their ICU patients who were right in front of them. And the oxygen saturation was dropping from the normal of 96, 97, or 95, which it should be, and it was dropping into the 80s and into the high 70s. And in other words, this person was dying in front of her. She used ivermectin, and her statistically described circumstance, 90% of patients given ivermectin within an hour and a half had oxygen saturation soaring up from 70 to 75% to suddenly into the mid-90s and was normal. And that's because ivermectin treats the actual disease. The actual disease is not a lung disease. The actual disease is a vessel disease within the lungs. The tiny little vessels that intersect between your body and the lungs, they're capillaries. They're extremely small. They're sometimes only wide enough for red cells to go by in single file. And the red cells going by in single file were being all stuck together because of the spike element within the COVID infection that they were fighting. They were sticky, and the sticky blocked red cells were blocking movement of blood throughout the lung system and essentially starving the person of oxygen. 90 minutes, that's all it took. She didn't need a ventilator. She didn't need other drugs. She didn't need budesonide. She didn't need steroids. And she certainly didn't need remdesivir and doing nothing, which was the normal protocol here in North America. Do nothing, dehydrate the person, and give them a drug that's toxic to their kidneys. That was the North American protocol for treating COVID. You wonder why your parents died in hospital? Because the doctors were being maligned and told and defined and said, you do anything other than this hospital protocol, you've lost your job. But Dr. Stone wasn't in that condition. She was in a condition where she could think on her own feet. She brought the oxygen level up from 75 to 95 in an hour and a quarter, in an hour and a half. It was brought up. The patients were saved. The patients were fine in South Africa. The patients were fine in Zimbabwe, while they were dying in Ohio, dying in Ontario, dying in British Columbia, dying in Quebec, dying all through North America because we did the wrong things, and Dr. Stone had the proof in her clinic. Third story. It's about a lawyer and a judge. You wouldn't think a lawyer and a judge would be in a medical story. Mr. Robert Luigo, pardon me. Mr. Luigo, an eminent lawyer in Buffalo, New York. Very professional, very senior, called upon to do some litigation on behalf of people whose parents couldn't be given ivermectin in U.S. hospitals. And he was called upon to go to court. And he went to court 100 times. And you know, he won 50 times, and he lost 50 times. Please picture this. The judge, in 50 of the cases, sided with the hospital and said, no, you can't give ivermectin. The family can't ask for ivermectin. The patient has to stay in the hospital. They have to take the standard treatments. And I won't adjudicate on behalf of the family who was suing, and no, I'm sorry, but the hospital's circumstance must hold sway, and that's my decision. In those 50 cases where the patients were denied ivermectin, all 50 were dead within 2 weeks. All 50. A totally different segment of his 100 clients. He went in front of judges who, for one reason or another, chose to side with him. The cases were all of a mixed average circumstance. There were some people on ventilators, there were some people who were just very sick, but the overall mixture was similar. The 50 patients where the family and the patient won. The 50 patients Mr. Luongo fought for, and where the hospital had to give up their control of what would happen to the patient. And these 50 cases were allowed to have ivermectin put down the endotracheal tube, or the nasogastric tube, down into the gastric stomach. The ivermectin was simply oral ivermectin down into the patient's stomach while they were virtually unconscious. 10 days later, 49 out of 50 of those patients went home alive. So, pure luck as to which judge you got. If the judge you got allowed you to get ivermectin and deny the hospital total control over what happened to you in the hospital, you lived. The opposite happened when the opposite judge gave his judgment. That's the third story. Fourth story, Invercargill, New Zealand, 2022 into 2023. And a journalist, they worked very hard in New Zealand to discern what was being done wrong by their government. And they went into a specific subset of people in a little town of Invercargill. And there was one little day in Invercargill when 100 patients came in and got a shot within the hour. Most of them left fine. Who knows, maybe one of them died within an hour. It sometimes happens from an allergic reaction, but basically, I think most people left and they were fine. But they did a follow-up of 100 patients a year later. The investigative journalists did. And they found out that in this particular little subset of people in this particular town who got the same RNA out of the same vial or batch of vials that had the same batch number. Normally in a year, 100 people here in this bar, by the end of the year, one of us will be dead. That's the normal deal. 99 of us will be alive in a year. 1% of the population of the Earth dies every year. 1% of the population of the bar on a given day in 2024 will die before the same date in 2025. That's normal numbers. You know what happened in Invercargill? To the 100 people who got a jab at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 year later, all getting the jab from the same lot number, 100 out of 100 were dead. Out of any number of statistical reasons. It's not because they jumped in a bus and all went somewhere together to say, aren't we happy we've had the jab? No, these people had nothing in common. They went different things. They had their lives. But in 1 year, after their second or third shot, because that's what they were receiving at that point, within 1 year of them all receiving the same batch, within the same hour, in the same little town, all 100 people were dead and buried. I'll give you one last story, and then at the end, perhaps you'll let me know if you think ivermectin is more safe or the jabs are more safe. This one is a serious scientific study that I've been talking about for 3 months now. I spoke about it in Washington, D.C. I spoke about it in the Senate with Mr. Ron Johnson having knowledge of this as well, Senator Johnson. And the Nakahara study is the key thing to remember. For those of you at home, Nakahara, look up the Nakahara study. Done in 4 centers, Oxford, Tokyo, New York City, and Houston. 4 major medical centers. And they were trying to figure out, why are the hearts showing black up on our PET scans? These were specialists who were following people with cancer. Just cancer follow-up. You know, just looking to see if there's metastasis or extra activity in lymph nodes or your liver or your spleen. That's why they were having it. And it often shows up, if you've got bad metastatic cancer, it shows up black because cancer uses sugar like crazy. And they couldn't figure out, why is the heart showing up as black as cancer? The heart never shows up with sugar uptake as high as cancer, and yet in significant numbers of the patients in front of us, we're getting the PET scan and it's showing blackness level of sugar uptake. And I don't have the slides to show you here right now today, but they're available on my website and also on my Twitter or X account. And what they discerned, and when they did all the isolating factors and the confounders, here was the deal. The 700 patients in the study, and it became a retrospective study. In the retrospective study, 700 out of 700 patients who were vaxxed had between a 40 and a 100% elevation in their sugar uptake in their heart. And that means you've got a diseased heart. The heart doesn't normally take up sugar. It normally, shall we say, metabolizes lipids and certain other micro things, but it basically doesn't use sugar. Once it starts to use sugar, it's saying, it's screaming, I am being forced into a strange metabolic state. I am sick as hell. You might not know it yet, but I'm already beating faster than I should, and I'm taking up sugar like crazy. So for 8 months after 2 vaccines, what they discerned, for 8 months after 2 vaccines, everybody's heart, even people who are still walking around and feeling fine enough today, for 8 months after your 2 jabs, you were going through extra work. So we finally found the canary in the mine shaft. We found the hidden reason, proven by the scientists, Nakahara and others, that every vaccinated heart is a damaged and overworking heart. And so at this point, yeah, should we have sympathy for each other? Should we have sympathy for each other? I think that one would be unanimous. But why don't we ask the question, are the vaccines good for us? Yes or no?
No! No!
Is ivermectin potentially for some people good for them?
Yes!
I finished my speech. I welcome and I get very excited to hear the speeches of the people who will follow me. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. So next, I would like to call to the stage Miss
stand in our truth. Okay, and I have 20 minutes, so I'm going to be real quick. So I'm going to start in 2016. I started having a lot of symptoms, but mostly I was super exhausted and had a lot of pain. So I went to the medical industry and we started trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And they can figure it out. And as time went, I got worse and worse. I started having, they thought I had endometriosis. They thought I had rheumatoid arthritis. I had bladder issues. I felt like I had bugs crawling on my skin. I was starting to have difficulty swallowing. I was drooling, like memory loss. It just was never ending. And the doctors told me, well, after doing all the tests that they knew that we could do, maybe it's all in your head. And so I started panicking because I was like, I'm going to die before they figure out what's wrong with me. And so I started doing my own research, and I found out about something called fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia here in Canada is known to be a long-term disability, and what they do is that they don't really know what it is, so they give you Band-Aid medications for every symptom that you have. But I did my own research, and I found out about fibromyalgia and how it's all about toxicity. And toxicity is anything that stresses and causes inflammation in your body. So that could be things in the food, in the air, in the water, in medications, and most importantly, trapped emotions and unresolved trauma. And so I knew I had a lot of that, so I was like, this kind of makes sense for me. And so around the same time, I was actually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And so what the medical industry wanted to do is give me a pill, for a painkiller pill, a sleeping pill, hormones. And I was like, what happens is that people don't know. And so they take the medications and they feel better for a while, which is, what a relief. But the thing is that you become tolerant to them, and then you need a higher dose, and a higher dose, and a higher dose, until you can't get a higher dose. And then, yeah, I believe it, long-term disability. So I decided not to go that way and get help for my trauma. And so I went to the Gatehouse, which is actually a few blocks from here, which is a safe space for sexual abuse survivors. And there I found out that I was super normal for what I had gone through. And so that helped a lot of my shame drop. I started accepting myself, forgiving myself for all the things I had put myself through. And, I got sober. I started going to the gym. I lost 60 pounds. I started eating organic foods, taking supplements. But most importantly, I started standing in my truth and put the blame back where it belonged. And so within a year, I was in the best shape of my life. And I no longer had the so-called long-term disability fibromyalgia. And so, thank you. And so you can imagine, I started looking at the medical industry like, what's going on? I worked in a nursing home and I was like, what are my residents eating? And why am I giving them so much medications? And so, at the same time, I love the Gatehouse so much, the programs helped me so much, I started facilitating there. And as I facilitated, I started noticing that a lot of people with trauma have illnesses like fibromyalgia. And so I started helping them and started noticing that they were getting better. So I got excited and I founded Lighting Up Dark Corners. And so I thought, this is my purpose, I'm gonna start running programs, but I was very comfortable with my 2 nursing jobs. I'm a single mom of 3 and a lot of debt. And so that kind of took the back burner. And then the pandemic hit. So I'm in the best place of my life, the pandemic hits. And I'm working in a nursing home and I'm thinking, nobody's gonna believe this. Everyone knows the government doesn't care about these residents. Like, they literally get a fraction of the money for food that prisoners do. And so I get to work and nobody felt like me. And people were like, Sarah, don't be a big mouth with this. So I was chief steward of the union where I work. So I called the union and I was like, they're taking away my residents' rights, they're taking away our rights, what are we gonna do about it? And they turned around and said, Sarah, don't you care about your residents? And that's when I knew I was in trouble. So I stayed quiet and started watching my residents deteriorate. I had a resident that died of a heart attack within a week of the lockdowns and families not being able to come in. She was the kind of person that when I came in the morning, I had to call her daughter and know what time she was coming because her mother was going to ask me every 5 minutes. Her mother was going to ask me every 5 minutes, and if she was 2 minutes late, this lady had heart problems and she would go into anxiety. Her congestive heart failure would start acting up. And so within a week, she died of a heart attack. And people were like, Sarah, that's probably a coincidence. And so also, nursing home is the last stop for these people. The only thing that brings them back to life, that makes them come to life, is when their families show up and their loved ones. And some of these residents won't eat from us. They only eat from their families. So what happened to those people? It's called failure to thrive. They let themselves die, and they died alone because families were most of the time not even allowed to come in, or if they were, it was for 15 minutes all gowned up and stuff. And then things got worse. Some people tested positive with no symptom in my workplace, and now people had to be locked up in their room for 14 days until everybody was clear. And anybody who was fighting or didn't want to listen to what they were saying was said to have a behavior. The doctor was called and they were sedated. If they didn't want to stay in their room and they were trying to come out with their walkers, they would take away their walkers. And, you know, that puts them to risk for falls. They're alone in there. It was a lot of neglect. And also, I was facilitating in the community and seeing how devastating it was for people's mental health. My mental health started deteriorating because I was there at work not saying anything. And, you know, I had healed, I was crying all the time. I started smoking weed again. And, you know, I had healed myself because I learned to stand in my truth. And I realized anytime I disalign with that truth, my mental health deteriorates. And so here I was, not speaking the truth, and I felt like my silence was making me on the side of the oppressor. And so I decided to speak out. And this was October 31st, 2020. I spoke out, and all my fears came through. I lost both my jobs. I'm under 5 or 6 investigations by the College of Nurses now. We founded Canadian Frontline Nurses, Advocates for Medical Freedom. And, you know, we were defamed internationally, called domestic terrorists by some, countless death threats, RCMP, summons, blah, 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 you name it. But that didn't stop us. We went during the lockdowns, we did a whole tour of Canada, and came back and did the national hospital protests. And then, again, we got hit real hard by the media then and got a lot of death threats again. But we kept going, and we were creating a new healthcare paradigm, actually. And we had a lot of legal cases going on. We had a defamation case, and that one was turned against us, and we were fined with like $315,000. And unfortunately, that destroyed Canadian Frontline Nurses, and it kind of fell apart. So now, you know, Canadian Frontline Nurses, I'm the only owner. It's open only for legal and accounting reasons, but may be revived as I finish this court case. So, what's going on now? So now, fast forward to now, when I first spoke out in October 2020, the College of Nurses put 12 allegations against. So one of their investigations has 12 allegations against me. It's now turned into a disciplinary hearing that's been going on for 16 months. We're on day 21. My experts, Dr. Pellick and Dr. Byron Bridle, were not even qualified halfway. It's a circus, and everything, pretty much every allegation is known to be true today, but they keep referring to the fact that I had no way of knowing in 2020. And so I need help with this case. You know, I have little cards and stuff, but I really need for people to actually be aware and watch the case too, because it shows them that people are interested, and they're making it very difficult. People have to email. You can email at hearingsadministrationgroup@cnomail.org and ask for the emails pretty much for every single time. And so, yeah, it makes it really difficult, but that would be great if you can do that and even have it on, because it's 9 to 5 during work days too. So it makes it very difficult. But I also have a Give, Send, Go and e-transfers. You can send e-transfers at sarahscnocase@hotmail.com, and also Give, Send, Go /forward SOS_4FOR_Sarah SARAH. And so that's what I'm doing there. So we really need help there because my case has precedence. That means that I'm the example. I was the first nurse to speak out at a rally, and I also founded Nurses Against Lockdown that became Canadian Frontline Nurses. So they're coming after me for that. They're like, you united nurses, you were the first to speak out. So it's very important that I actually win this case. Because if I win, it uncensors nurses across Canada. If I lose, we're going to stay censored. And we won't be able to get informed consent, which is devastating. We saw what it did, right? And people should have, they're going against pretty much all of their own code of conduct and standards of practice. So anyways, but as I stayed in the front, what I noticed too, being in the front lines and fighting in the front like this, is that I was really like, I asked myself, like, where are all the leaders in our country? And I understand now, because people are like, why are you so different? What made you speak out? And I'm like, I'm not different. It's because I learned to stand in my truth. So now I'm on a mission. I'm very big on mental health. So lighting up dark corners now came back to light. You see, because when you align with yourself and do what's right, all the right doors open for you, right? Nursing was no longer for me, but I was like, yeah, paycheck, you know, so God, the universe was like, let's get that out of your way. This is what you're going to be doing. And so that's what I'm doing now. I run free workshops. I have a free workshop online and in person called Stand in Your Truth, Healing from Childhood Trauma. Everybody needs it. So I do have little flyers and stuff. If you're interested, you can take it. And then it's a preview to my HEAL program, and that shows you how to stand in your truth. And once you know how to stand in your truth, you don't want to comply with any crap from abusive whoever is at the top. And so that's what we need to do. So that's what I've been doing. That's the mission I'm on. I'm always open to doing interviews and podcasts about what I'm doing to get the word out there. I'm very censored. I was running the social medias for Canadian frontline nurses, and it's just shut down my whole personal accounts. And so, well, I don't know. You want to hear a joke? No, I'm joking. Okay. So what was I saying? So yeah, please follow me at lightingupdarkcorners.com. And you can see the work that I'm doing there. And as I said, I really need help with this nurses, the College of Nurses. And so if we can get more awareness, if you know anyone who can do fundraisers or anything like that, I really appreciate it. And I just want to remember everybody here. There's a reason why you're here. You are all the pioneers of the new world we're trying to create. Don't think that it's not you, it's you. So get out there, stand in your power, and let's get it done. Thank you.
Sarah will be back on the medical panel. Now, next we are going remote. We are bringing in Dr. Mark Trozzi from BC. So you're going to hear a little bit of testing because we weren't able to test him before because we have to test him live. So please be patient with us for just 2 seconds. Just a reminder, there is food in the back corner. That is free. Help yourself. The bar would appreciate your patronage. And as well, there is donations here at the front. If you feel it in your heart to give to the donations, we do have to pay for the venue and the food, and that would be really appreciated. We are going to do some testing and bring Mark Trozzi on. He is one of the very first doctors that I saw speaking out in the Bancroft area. So he's been a hero of mine, and he's now become a good friend of mine and Chris's. So here he is. I'm going to give the stage to you, Mark.
I wish I could be with you in person and have some hugs and help eat that food. Please let me know if at any point you can't hear me well, because it's difficult for me to hear you. You okay? Okay, excellent. Alright, I'm getting some funny background noise, so I'm just going to turn my volume down. And you can still hear me fine? Excellent, excellent. Well, God bless all of you. Thanks for all being part of this big fight to restore civilization after the last crazy 4 years and a lot of preparation for it. And I think this is an excellent subject to look at, is how are we going to make the world better. So, of course, I don't have all the answers to that, but I've got a few ideas I'd like to share. And some of these came out of conversations that we've had recently. I don't know if you know, but we've been forming a World Council for Health Canada Council, Ted Kuntz and myself, and we've got a really great team. And so we looked at what our top priorities should be. And so I'm going to just kind of run through and talk about each of those 7 priorities, if I may. So the first one is to educate ourselves and other Canadians on how to best stand our ground. And you know, we're looking at what one of the real heroes of me doing that. What we would go back to 2020. She just did an amazing job and showed all this. She created manuals, and this is a really important area. On the one hand, we do see good news happening in some governments, but in Canada, both in Ontario and federally, and certainly out here in BC where I'm visiting and doing town halls right now, we're just seeing absolute tyrannical moves being made by the government. And we know that recently Canada signed on to the IHR amendments. And we can see from a health perspective, the agenda that the global parasites and their minions in Canada are pushing is that they will monitor everything from our septic systems to our noses and our backyards, look for pathogens, real or not, and then impose mandates on how we can live, what we can and can't do, violate our human rights, and ultimately inject us with more genetic invasions. And so while we're working very hard on many fronts, a lot of us people in the audience here, I'm sure tonight, on trying to stop that, on trying to restore legitimate government in Canada, we still have these defunct governments operating. And so learning our rights, knowing how to stand on our rights and hold our ground, we think that's really an important area moving forward. Another area that we think is really important, and I like to put this under the heading of flipping the tables. And by that I'm referring to the story of this isn't going to get religious. I think most of you know that I have friends of all different faiths and reasonable backgrounds. But the story of Jesus going into the temple in Jerusalem, and there were the money exchangers. And here was supposed to be a sacred house. You know, it was supposed to be a house of spirituality. It was a temple, and here they had turned it into a brothel, essentially. And here this very peaceful man flipped the tables on them and took the whip and whipped them out of the building. And I think this concept of flipping the tables on the perpetrators of the large variety of crimes committed against us recently is very important. One of the ways we think we can do this is to take advantage of an unusual thing. And this speaks to two wonderful people that I just saw before me, Dr. Chris Shoemaker, truly one of my heroes, Sarah Choujounian, what a wonderful nurse. I really want to work together and serve people together. But one thing that the last 4 years has done, we know that the psychological operation against all of us has definitely included against doctors and nurses. And doctors and nurses have been coerced into committing medical crimes, into violating their oaths, into violating the Hippocratic Oath, into violating international, federal, and provincial laws, and the rules of the colleges, both of nurses and of doctors, regarding informed consent and coercion. But through this, we have seen that a very special group of nurses and doctors, as well as other scientists, activists, lawyers, but we're going to focus in on nurses and doctors for a moment, have actually resisted this. And you have some of them right there with you today in the room. And what this means is these are nurses or doctors who have maintained their oaths, maintained their ethics, kept their head correct about science, and have defended the people of our country no matter what has happened to them. And the things that have happened to us are absolutely abhorrent. But the things that have happened to our citizens abhor us even more. I have been to many safe and effective funerals. I have friends who have safe and effective cancer. And by that, I'm mocking the agenda and mocking these criminals who have lied to Canadians and called these genetic injections safe and effective. So what this has served for us, for instance, here I am at the moment in British Columbia. Now, if you had asked me 5 years ago to pick the most trustworthy doctors in British Columbia, I would have had no idea. But now I know that before I even arrived here. I know that I trust Dr. Malthouse, Dr. Hoff, Dr. Nagasi, and Dr. Boucher. I trust them a lot. And it's easy for me to know that because they have withstood such horrific abuse. And despite that, and despite all the losses, they've stood their ground. And so this is another area I think we need to, they're saying, for instance, we took we suspended Dr. Shoemaker's license, we suspended Dr. Kellyanne, we suspended Sarah Choujounian. Okay, that presents us with some problems. But the fact that a very large and growing portion of the population no longer trust the medical system, no longer trust the doctors and nurses who managed to get their licenses, God bless them, we want to rescue them from this also. But we know there's a very short list of people that we now trust a lot. For instance, in medical science, I trust Dr. Bridle and Dr. Speicher a lot, and others like Dr. Pelch. So we want to work towards elevating these people, and we're going to establish, basically awards. Some of us were lucky enough to win the Medical Heroism Award in 2023 from LifeSite News. But I think we really need to take the people we know we can trust, and as we build an alternative healthcare system, we want to put them in elevated positions, because I know, for instance, in BC, the 4 doctors I know I can trust here, actually, 4, there's no way they could see all of us. I couldn't bring my family there and expect to get in if 2/3 of the province wants to see them. But if I'm going in the future to Dr. Hoff Hospital or Dr. Malthouse Clinic, and I know that they're supervising things, if I bring my an elderly relative in for nursing care, and I know that Sarah Choujounian is supervising that she's in an authoritative role because she has proven herself under fire, I'm going to feel confident about that, and I'm going to know that my family or friends are safe. So that's another, I think, an important priority that I see for restoring our world, which is to ignore the demonization of our most trusted experts by completely gone criminal and occupied institutions, and rather elevate them and put them in positions that we can have them really serve and help lead us forward. And that brings me to another point, which is creating an alternative healthcare association. Now, some of us have already done this. Dr. Kellyanne, for instance, private membership associations. I know others have worked with it. I was just with the group in Alberta talking with them. And we want to bring all these leaders together in this, and we want to really look at how we do this. In other words, how do we keep these what I consider criminals currently occupying offices in healthcare, like in colleges and physician surgeons? How do we get them out of our interaction so that we can seek medical advice from the people we trust, or healthcare, or health coaching, or whatever one we call it? I think that's another important area for us to work on, because as much as we're working hard to restore the old institutions, hoping that they don't just have to be burned to the ground, we need healthcare now. People need healthcare now. People are suffering now more than ever, especially when you consider 70–80% of the population has been coerced and forced into a game of Russian roulette with a genetic experiment, and many are sick and injured more than we've had in a long time. Another thing we want to do, and this is where I'd like to speak about World Counts for Health. And the World Counts for Health, I think a lot of you know about the World Counts for Health. We've done a lot as a big international team. We've worked very hard since early on in the pandemic. But we see the need to decentralize authority, because we don't want in any way to replace the World Health Organization as the top-down, on top of a pyramid, to force medical mandates on the population, with all of us human beings at the bottom with their boot on our neck through their local administrators. On the other hand, we believe that the authority over your health should be you. Around you should have the support of your family, your community, your country, and ultimately the world. And so the World Counts for Health, we're now working into an association of country councils. There are now 37 countries who have established councils. We're meeting together, supporting each other. We don't all have to agree on everything. We don't think there should be global mandates over countries. But we think that these country councils will help inform the public, help coordinate actions of amazing groups like the one holding this meeting, and defend the rights of individuals over their bodies. And by having a global network doing that, will allow us to participate in that forum, share information, and also pull together to support each other. For instance, about a month ago in Japan, the World Council for Health Japan held a very successful, massive protest outside the WHO headquarters there. And on the screen, we played a very big screen message from Canada, letting Tedros know the crimes he's committed, the harms he's caused in Canada, and the fact that we do anticipate him and we seek to bring him to justice. So these are the kind of global activities that we're taking to build a legitimate global organization, but keeping the individual person at the top of the authority over their body. I think another really important matter is we've got to educate ourselves and educate each other regarding health matters. Two big things stand out when I talk about this. One is, when you look at why people are dying younger than they should, in other words, causes of premature death, and causes of poor health, you're looking at about 70% or more of our health conditions are chronic diseases caused by lifestyle and nutrition and by abusive measures and protocols within the medical industrial complex. So we think it's super important to educate ourselves and each other about nutrition. Now, in terms of immunity, because a big thing we've come through is immune function. They're all locked up. A whole bunch of mandates were done that destroyed immunity, blocked herd immunity, and created this seemingly endless industry of disease and injections. But the real foundations of good immune health can be summarized in a very simple mnemonic, which is, just remember the mnemonic, new start. So think of NEW for new and START for start. Those letters stand for nutrition, eating a clean, wholesome diet of natural foods, organic foods. Try to get away from all the weeds loaded with glyphosate and other poisons. Eat a large variety of products, different vegetables in different color, different fruits. So, that's a very trimmed down, statement on nutrition. The E in U is exercise. However you get active, live an active lifestyle. W is for water. Generally, people are underhydrated. You should be well hydrated. You should be drinking at least 2 to 3 liters of clean, fluoride-free water every day. The next S from the start is for sunshine, and you should add to that the sunshine vitamin D. Sunshine is extremely important for your health. Vitamin D is generated by good exposure to sunshine. Almost all of us need lots more vitamin D than that orally, and it's a major determinant of immune system health, both for cancers and infections. Then in start comes the letter T for temperance, and that's also known as moderation. Heavy drinking, heavy smoking, these type of things, taking drugs, they're not good for your health. That should be fairly obvious. Then comes A for air, as in fresh air. Get fresh air, get out among the trees, breathe the negative ions and the high quality air coming off your parks. Forest bathing is a term we apply for that. Then you should think about rest, which is the final R in start. Healthy sleep is so key. And T is for trust in God. And you can also interpret that as take care of your families and your children's spiritual health. We've listened to Noah Harari, that lunatic from the WFC. We're hackable animals and we have no spirit. Well, we do have the spirit, and we should ignore this nonsense. We need to get back to paying attention to our spiritual health. And we've got a wealth of resources from Buddha to Christ and Muhammad. So that's a little bit on that subject of educating folks. And there's a lot more. There's so much we're learning about healthcare. I mean, this crisis has brought together such an excellent international team of real nurses, real doctors, real scientists, real investigators. And, the sky is the limit for our health. Even cancer, there's so many ways that we're discovering and sharing of how to resolve cancer. So all this is really important education, and it needs to include the new leading cause of disease on the earth. And you can go to the hospital with any of the approximately 1,200 different diagnoses one can get as a result of the injections. But the medical industrial complex and our captured colleagues, they're not even allowed to recognize it. So they're treating these superficial layers of disease without looking at the underlying cause. And the underlying cause is toxic injections that Dr. Speicher will enlighten you on more. And I think a lot of you know a lot about it. We haven't got all the solutions, but we certainly know a lot about disrupting the poisonous and immune damaging effects of the spike protein. So I think health education in general and health education about how to deal with the adverse effects that are now brewing in a major portion of the population is important. The last couple of priorities that I'd like to talk about, one is supporting both Canadian and international projects to establish both civil and criminal justice. You know, the cure for COVID from the beginning was justice. Some people may think, hey, justice, that doesn't sound so peaceful. Well, Martin Luther King pointed out that love without justice was powerless. Justice is very important. We must refuse to live in a world where people commit these crimes, malfeasance in public office, fraud, coercion, medical assault, and all kinds of things happening in other tiers that are not as close to where I'm working, which is in the health and medical tier. And so we really want to, and get behind the people doing that. You know, for instance, we have Justice for Medicine, we have the JCCF. There's so many good people right there in your region. Chris Weisdorf's done some amazing things. Jody Ledgerwood and Chris Fleck have done some amazing things in this. And this pursuit of justice is so important. We must never accept that these crimes will go unpunished and that we will continue to live in this form of tyranny that will kill us. And then I think another and last important area I'd like to talk about is to support the projects to place citizens back in control of our governments. I don't feel I'm an expert in this area, I'm a student in this area, but I'll share the thing that stands out the most to me, which is, first of all, we need new candidates in office, that's no question. A lot of us are excited about an injection of truth. Dr. Shoemaker, Dr. Speicher, who are there with you now, they were with me at an injection of truth. It was a phenomenal event. It was a beachhead because it was hosted by the UCP party, which is the ruling party of Alberta. That's a beachhead. We've had smaller beachheads. We have good politicians. There are good members of parliament right now. I know I'm in contact with some of them. They're as frustrated as you are, and we're working together and doing what we can. But we have to remember, as well as getting great candidates, I think we really need to look at independent candidates. I mean, the party system has destroyed politics in Canada, and there's a lot to be said for us saying, no, we're only going to vote for independents. But I think it's early to say what our moves are in the next election in that regard. But I really think we should support all the people doing great work in that area. But the other thing I'd like to mention on this is, elections are just one event every 4 years or so. But the truth is, every one of us in this country has at least 3 servants in government. You have your servants in your municipal government, you have your servants in your provincial government, and you have your servants in your federal government. And by that I mean each of us has a member of the town council, a member of the provincial parliament, and a member of the federal parliament. Now, whether you voted or didn't vote for the current member of parliament that you have or of government, whether you think they're doing a great job or a terrible job, whether they have demonstrated that they are wonderful people trying to do their job or that they're completely corrupted, meat puppets of the political party which is controlled by the World Economic Forum, either way, they are still the person you have hired and there for the job. Now, if anyone's run a company, you've probably had some bad employees, you've had great employees. Great employees are wonderful. I wish they were all Leslie Lewis's and Colin Carey's and Derek Sloan's and Randy Hillier's, etc. But sometimes you have terrible employees, and you might even be planning on firing them. But unfortunately, the firing doesn't come either until the arrests happen as soon as possible, or we may be waiting for the elections. But in the meanwhile, they're still your employee, and you should still hold their foot to the fire. I've talked to some members of parliament recently, both provincially and federally, who say, you know what, nobody calls me. I don't get it. People aren't reaching out to me. It's true, a lot of politicians are not getting orders from their employers, and that's you. We need to be polite, but we also need to be very direct, because our grandchildren's and grandchildren's future is completely on the line here. So make it a habit to talk to your municipal, provincial, and federal elected officials, and tell them what you want done. Criticize them for what they've done wrong, and lift them up for what they've done right. Let's make it a special point to really lift up our good politicians, so the other ones are, listen, we'll lift you up if you do the right things, but we know who you are, and we'll hold you liable when you don't. So those are some of my thoughts on how we make the world a better place. I'm super grateful to get to, log in virtually, currently here in BC, hoping to come home to Ontario in the next while. I love you guys, and I look forward to hearing from the other speakers and to share this event across a lot of platforms. Blessings.
Thank you so much to Mark Trozzi for taking the time out. He's out at, oh, my bad. Mark, there you are. It's Kelly. I hope you can see me. Can you see me? Can you see me? Mark, thank you so much for streaming in. You know I love you to pieces. I was just with him in Manitoba at the Stronger Together conference, and he was so busy. He's like a superstar across the country these days, and he totally deserves it. All of our doctors do. So I want to thank you, sweetheart, so much for being here. And I will touch base soon so that I can give you the whole enchilada. But I really appreciate you so much. Thank you for all the work that you do. Everybody, please, one more hand for Dr. Mark Trozzi.
Bless you, everybody.
Love you too, honey. Love you too.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Perfect. So right before I introduce the next speaker, I have a few words to say. First and foremost, our doctors have been the largest part of this movement, and our nurses, because when they came out in support of us, and I gotta tell you, Lamont Daigle, myself, Vlad Sobolev, and Chris Skye, as you guys know, like, they were calling us the Queen's Park Quartet. And everybody in the entire world was pointing their fingers at us, thinking we were absolutely nuts. But we didn't care because we had the truth, and we knew we had the truth. So we stood on that square, and our nurses started listening, and our doctors started listening. And then, Lamont's amazing organizational skills brought everybody together, moved us all to Dundas Square, and we blew up across the country and the whole wide world. And it was a lot. It's been a hard 4 years for all of us. But there's some of us that are still here, we're still committed, and we made a promise in the beginning that we were going to bring relief to the country, and we absolutely intend to. And we finally got a strategy, and more on that later. But the next speaker, I find that he has been through some discrimination along the last 4 years. I want to introduce you to a man who's got probably the longest medical CV that I've ever seen in my life. He's one of the top scientists, not just in Canada, but in all of North America. He's worked overseas in Africa, and he was on that research team right in the beginning from McMaster University at Sunnybrook Hospital. And he's an honest man, so he walked away from that team so that he can stand up for the lives of the people in this country, a country that he loves so much. He's got a little bit of a speech impediment, so I'm going to ask you for your patience, but it holds no bar to how genius our next speaker is. Please put your hands together for Dr. David Speicher.
Wow, it is good to be here. I love to walk on a big stage, but I will keep it quiet. Can you see these? Yes? Awesome. So, next slide, Ed. So, if you, who here has heard of the DNA contamination in the vaccine vials? I have done the largest global study on this. The largest one to date. I have confirmed the work of Kevin McPherson, and this here was used to call for a vaccine halt in Florida by Dr. Joseph Depot earlier this year, and subsequently elsewhere around the world. Tides are turning, things are going. And it's about one thing. Thank you. what are they saying and what is actual scientific fact. We must follow the science. And next one. Yep, next slide. So, we're all told these are just a simple lipid nanoparticle containing a small piece of mRNA, and that's all. We said, oh, it's no big deal. There's no DNA there. There's nothing functional. It won't enter our nucleus. It'll stay at the site of injection. And these vaccines are, of course, safe and effective, right? And two, these vaccines are not associated with an increased rate of cancer. And next slide. So I have looked at 38 vials, 32 in Canada, 3 in Australia, 3 in the US. I've looked at all types, Pfizer, Moderna, monovalent, the bivalents, and the new boosters. And the new boosters are just as bad as the first one. Ed, next slide. So, what have we found? Well, using PCR, there's about 4 nanograms per dose in there. CT of 15. I found a vial last week, CT of 10. This here is about 186 billion copies of spike DNA per dose inside the lipid nanoparticle. And with spirometry, it's up to around 3,000 nanograms per dose. And Pfizer contains an SV40 promoter and enhancer. Ed. So, yes, it's residual DNA, it's fragments, right? These are the FDA guidelines, and the vaccines break almost all of them. So, it exceeds the dose, it exceeds the fragment size, and when this was submitted for Health Canada approval, Pfizer gave this map here. In actual fact, they left off the SV40 enhancer and promoter, things. All sorts of things which should not be there was left off on purpose. Next slide. So, what does Health Canada say? Well, 6 hours after my work came out, Epoch Times put out this response from Health Canada, and they said that at first, there is no SV4T in the Pfizer vaccines. They went back and checked and went, yes, okay, it's there, except it's not linked to an increased risk of cancer or health things. Next slide. And they said these fragments are all inactive and have no functional role and are consistently below the limit required. Well, at the same time they say this, in the House of Commons, Health Canada writes Pfizer and says, why is there a SVB4T in there? Explain things. Is this a circular thing? Is it fragments? And last week, we have caught Health Canada contradicting themselves on order paper questions in the House of Commons on the answered record, which means Health Canada is lying about this to our politicians in House of Commons. And that needs to be, find out what's going on and who's hiding something, and we need to get to the bottom of this. So that's what me and my team are trying to work out. There's a great increase in turbo cancer. We've all seen it. We all know someone who has it. and it's been a big increase ever since these vaccines have been rolled out. So why is that? Why is there a increase? Well, multiple things. The first thing is DNA integration of these fragments into the genome. Health Canada says these are fragmented and non-functional. We know from a David Dean 1999 research paper out of Rochester that if you put a DNA fragment into a cytoplasm of a non-replicating cell, and that DNA fragment contains a 72 base pair repeat, and put as few as 3 to 10 copies per cell into the cytoplasm. These fragments are all inside the lipid nanoparticles, and that is putting all this into our cytoplasm. Those fragments will move into the nucleus, cross the nuclear membrane, and integrate into our genome. They've known this since 1999, and they have been using this against us. 2 months ago, it's been shown if you put the vaccine on top of ovarian cancer cell lines, it will integrate into pre-cancerous genes in chromosome 9 and 12, and that drives this. And so, go on in. There are multiple reasons why these shots are causing an increased risk of health things. And 2, the more I look, the more our team looks, the more things we find. So, there were lockdowns which cut access to healthcare, cancer literature. SARS-CoV-2 itself can integrate in part in the genome, and the vaccine. LNPs and spike are toxic and will cause harm. They suppress the immune system. And 2, all of this N1-methyl pseudouridine is all causing ribosomal frame shifting, which makes spike of all sorts of sizes, and the smaller ones can cross the blood-brain barrier and be free on light. And lately, there's double stranded RNA in there and RNA DNA hybrids in there, which cause harm. And the entire reverse ORF and codes for spin-loin, fibrogen clot-like proteins. And what are we pulling out of dead vax people? Those white fibrinous clots. So every aspect we look at, these vaccines are and can be causing harm. So all of this is completely unacceptable and should never have been used. Last minute. So much of what we are told about these shots is untrue. And yes, they launched this whole thing called the Hope Accord. Who here's heard of the Hope Accord? I encourage all of you, look up this link and sign it. I have signed it. Because this here calls for the exact same thing I've been calling for the past 12 months. Suspend these vaccines, reevaluate safety and efficacy of these things, and two, immediate recognition support of all the vaccine injured people out there. We need the vaccine injured to be cared for. They have been harmed. Our government has mandated things that have caused harm to people. Our government on that part should do the responsible thing, admit they've caused harm, and care for those people, and restore all ethical principles in medicine abandoned during COVID. And last, address the root cause of what is going on. We need all this to happen, and I am doing what I can to make sure this happens. So it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me here, Kellyanne, Wolfe. Huh? The Hope Accord.com.
Wonderful.
Is it .com or .org?
So everybody, Dr. David Speicher, and I'm so grateful for you, and so grateful for you. And that was wonderful. Well, how's everybody doing? Doing good? Doing okay? Okay. So we did throw this together in only literally 2 weeks. We kind of just threw it together, and I'm so grateful for everybody that's here. But we are going to be moving along. The next speaker that I want to introduce was with us, and I mean, come hell, high water, rain or shine, and even snow and ice up to our chins. Remember that in Barrie, Ontario? He came out. The first time he spoke was with us at Dundas Square, and he's just been a powerhouse ever since. He has also been one of the anchormen on Bright Light News. Please put your hands together for Dr. Emad Guirgus.
Okay, hello Etobicoke. Hey! And welcome super spreaders. You remember that? Remember the super spreaders? So my name is Kelly. Thank you for the honor of having me participate in this as a very short speaker and the moderator of the medical panel. And I'm Dr. Emad G. I'm a recovering doctor. I am a recovering doctor. One of my favorite quotes is from C.S. Lewis, who said that education without values seems to make one a more clever devil. Education without values just makes one a more clever devil. And that's why 500 years before Christ was born, Hippocrates, Dr. Hippocrates came up with the Hippocratic Oath because he recognized the predisposition to corruption in our own hearts. When profit overrides ethics, we have a major problem, and this is what we've seen and witnessed the last several years. You know, I was startled just as the vaccines were rolled out about 4 or 5 months after it rolled out, and Pfizer's own study showed that 1,200 people had died in the first 3 months. It was hidden, it was covered up. I had people approach me and say, you know, can you please find a practicing doctor that will give us exemption for the vaccine? And I remember one case was a friend of mine who had 2 boys, 16 and 18, who just wanted to play hockey. So I approached a friend of mine that was a doctor that I thought was a critical thinker. I've worked with him for many years, and I said, hey, listen, I've got this situation, these 2 healthy boys, they don't want to get vaccinated. Their father is awake. He realizes that these are very dangerous. He's been doing his research. And I was actually stunned by this doctor's response. He started screaming at me, using F-bombs like I've never seen. They should get their vaccine. They're going to put all these kids at risk. They're going to F in this and F in that. I said, I guess he's not giving them the exemption. But then I started wondering, how does that happen? How does a guy who seems to be very intelligent not see what's happening, not do critical appraisal? And it's basically because there is a creation of a doctor that ambushed and sabotaged the Hippocratic Oath and all of ethics, and it started in 1910. And they didn't teach us this in medical school. In 1910, Rockefeller partnered with Flexner, and they came up with this report that elevated organized medicine and elevated the pharma model above and beyond any other health approach. And up at that time, medicine, by and large, was ethical, using natural remedies, boosting the immune system, not involving toxic medications. But they set out with their power and their trillions of dollars to buy out regulators for medicine, buy out medical schools, buy out the media, buy out politicians, buy out doctors. And they created a model where the doctor feels that he is superior morally and academically to anyone else. They're going to be selected few, and this occurred with nursing as well. It was a parallel system where you elevate doctors and say you are the cream of the crop. Everybody else is a quack. Naturopaths, homeopaths, whatever. Anybody that questions organized medicine is one of those crazy people, the crazy conspiracy theorists. So they created really 2 classes of people. The one, the compliant. If you comply with organized medicine and it dictates, then you get rewarded. You get your profit, you get your house on the water, you get your boat, you get the large debt. You have all the luxuries and rewards of your training. If you don't, you're going to lose that, and that's what we've seen. So if profit is more important to you than ethics, then you're going to have your lifestyle, but you're not going to have any ethics. So it created the ultra-compliant robot, as I say, doctor. But it also created medical tyrants. And doctors are predisposed to dictatorship. A Lancet article in 2017 actually entitled "The Doctor as Dictator" pointed out that politicians that have a medical background are the most predisposed to tyranny. I mean deadly tyranny, like gassing their citizens, executing their citizens. Tedros is a good example, although he's not a medical doctor. Al-Assad in Syria, there's so many others in Haiti and others. Ophthalmologists, psychiatrists, family doctors, it didn't matter. Doctors in general are much more predisposed to dictatorship. So what we've seen in the last few years is that the regulators and the medical tyrants are lifted up in media, in TV, in politics. So you get Dr. Fauci, and believe it or not, the vast majority of doctors listen to Dr. Fauci when he says, you gotta get your booster. You gotta get a booster shot every 4 months. No, every 2 months. No, it's safe and effective. And even if you get sick, you're just gonna get a little bit sick. You're gonna hurt it. I mean, it's gonna be silent. You're gonna get myocarditis and die. So you won't really know how sick you are. So doctors actually elevate medical dictators, and TV doctors like Karen Moore, Dr. Teresa Tam, they elevate these dictators, and they annihilate and persecute the doctors that are practicing ethical, evidence-based medicine. Dr. Chris Shoemaker, Dr. Mark Trozzi, Dr. Patrick Phillips, Dr. Kellyanne. All these doctors have been persecuted, and they have had their licenses either threatened or withdrawn because they did not comply with the dictates of the college, the dictates of the government. But here's the good news before I bring up the panel, and in fact it's great news. What these tyrants have done, they've actually selected out the premier, like the premium doctors, the most ethical doctors, the most critically thinking doctors, and they have created a mega powerful dream team of the most brilliant minds, nurses and doctors. Unbeknownst to them, these doctors are rising up, and we are going to, as Dr. Trozzi alluded to, we are going to come up with a visionary health system that brings back ethics above profit, that eliminates corruption, that goes back to respecting human life, as Hippocrates said, the sanctity of life. Doing our best and doing no harm. And this is what these tyrants have done paradoxically. By persecuting the best doctors and the best nurses that we have, they've created a dream team that's going to rise up, because organized medicine is a DNR. Organized medicine is dead. People are recognizing that. More and more people are waking up and realizing organized medicine is profit and power driven and corrupt at its core, to the harm and to the death of the population. Now, I have the pleasure of bringing up the panel. So Dr. Shoemaker, if you could come up and join us here. Sarah? So Dr. Shoemaker practiced family medicine and emergency medicine for years, has been a strong advocate for safety and public protection from the harms of the messenger RNA toxic bioweapons. Sarah, we know, Sarah, I met years ago. I have so much respect for you, Sarah. You're still smiling. The most persecuted nurse in all of Canada continues to smile because her values involve ethics, involve speaking the truth at the cost of profit, at the cost of her career. She's doing it. I remember seeing Sarah in front of one of the hospitals in Toronto, and the predator mainstream media were all over her, and she just stood there with poise and smiling and answering the questions professionally as they tried to attack her and trap her. She would have none of it. God bless you, Sarah. And coming to us via streaming, Dr. Speicher, of course. Dr. David Speicher just spoke, and Dr. Speicher, obviously a very renowned and world-renowned molecular virologist who published a really seminal paper that he talked about today, identifying microscopic segments of DNA in the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. Dr. Speicher. And then we have Dr. Trozzi. Dr. Mark Trozzi should be coming to us via streaming, as well as Dr. Daniel Nagasi. So Dr. Nagasi actually has a degree from Dalhousie in cellular molecular biology, and also got his medical school. Hang on, I've got all these from McGill. No, McGill, Bachelor of Science in Cell Physiology, and Dalhousie, Doctor of Medicine. Dr. Nagasi, are you there? Nagasi. I use the Arabic, Nagasi. I use Arabic. Nagasi. Dr. Nagasi, are you there? And then we have Dr. Trozzi. Dr. Trozzi, probably one of the first physicians to speak out against the fraud, the COVID fraud, when he pointed out to mainstream media that at his hospital, even though the media was putting out these press releases that COVID patients are overwhelming the hospitals, overwhelming Emerge and ICU, and he's there in his hospital, he's like, no, they're not. This is like the lowest viral season we've had. And he came out and actually called out the truth, and as a result, of course, faced persecution by the college. So Dr. Trozzi?
No, Dr. Trozzi. Dr. Trozzi had to go to another meeting.
Okay, so it's Dr. Nagasi. Dr. Nagasi, Daniel, is he there? Okay, we'll get started before we get Dr. Nagasi. Okay. So we'll start with the lady. Sarah, are you ready?
Hello, I don't know. Am I ready?
So just in terms of the theme of education in nursing, when you went through, obviously you're a critical thinker, you're ethical, but when you were going through your training, what was sort of your mindset? Did you kind of conform to what they taught you, believe it all, or were you kind of a little skeptical?
Well, I don't really know how to conform.
So were you rebellious growing up? Were you like a little...
Yeah.
Okay, I figured
Yeah,
that.
big time.
And you know, it's funny because rebels tend to be critical thinkers for some reason.
Well, there you go. It's because we're not completely programmed.
Right.
Actually, in nursing school, the first thing we learn is the code of ethics.
Right.
And how, and for me that really stood out because I always liked being the voice of the voiceless or advocating. And so the thing that stood up to me is that it says in there that when the medical industry turns against the people, it's our responsibility to, I quote, agitate and advocate for what is best for our communities. So, you know, so my court case had 21 days up to now, so it was my first time on the stand on Wednesday. And they had given me the code of conduct and the standard of practice. Like they sent me the 12 allegations followed by this, and I was like, this is gaslighting, this is exactly what I did. And so in court, I took every point, told them how I followed it and how they did it, and I asked them, where's my reward?
When you first started practicing nursing, did you see some signs that there were problems as far as like corruption, as far as fraud, or was it only through the COVID introduction?
When I started, I was very excited. I loved being a nurse. Actually, it saved my life. I didn't feel like I had any value, and like helping people put a lot of value into me. So I think I wasn't really paying attention. I thought I was helping. I did. It's really when I started getting sick and really needed the help, and I did get it, that I really started. I mean, I always knew big pharma is making profit, but not to the extent that we see today.
Now on to Dr. Shoemaker. Dr. Shoemaker, when you were programmed or trained as a medical doctor, did you sort of have any thoughts that there were problems as far as some of the teaching, as far as pharmacology, maybe benefit risk ratios? Like, did you kind of critically analyze things as you went along and figured something was off?
Well, it's a little hard to remember because it was 47 years ago. I think it
47 years, you catch up?
I think it might have not worked all that well. I mean, when it's been that long ago, you forget if there was any programming going on. But, you know, to be honest, I don't think there was any programming going on. My teachers looked like something out of a Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. They had furry white eyebrows, white-haired cardiologists that I now have, but they were teaching us to be ethical, to always help our patient, to always give second thoughts to what's going on. You could easily be wrong the first time you're thinking about a doctor. You might find something 3 days into your treatment that is going to convince you that you should be actually going in the completely opposite direction. So there was a great emphasis in the 1970s on teaching the students to be very careful of what you think and to second guess yourself and even your colleagues all the time for the benefit of the actual client, the actual patient in front of you. That's what you had to do. And that was the main aspect of teaching that went on in the 1970s.
So Dr. Shoemaker brings up a good point that it's not all bad, that there's certainly some very ethical professors that we had.
Sure.
And professors that taught us how to critically think. Did you see, though, over time, a shift in the ethics of medicine?
Yeah, the area where that shift happened, which is in the 80s into the 90s, was when basically doctors were being, somehow the doctor getting a $400 stipend to go to a conference in Aurelia was somehow unethical. And they could no longer give small little perks to doctors to come and listen to their points. So what did they do? They did the very smart thing. Well, let's not even worry about giving small points of this or that to a physician to come and be bored with our talk about a new medicine that's going to make no difference to anybody, but we're going to say that it's making a difference. We won't put money into that anymore. Let's put money into mainstream media, glossy magazines, CTV news. There were less things happening on Canadian media than American, because American has always been more liberal about what they put into their media. But it became very quick. Suddenly Canada was every bit as open to advertising, dollars being spent into the media by Big Pharma. Well, once that happened, then the patients, the people out there were what the message was intended for. We'll just convince the people that they need a new kind of Lipitor. Or we'll convince the people that they need something to help them lose weight but might make them go blind, but we'll give them that with the semaglutides and stuff that are being offered now. So they just change tack. They just say, we'll advertise like heck to the general population, and no one will be able to resist it because the people will want what we tell them to want. That was the big change that happened in the late 80s into early 90s.
And this program brought to you by Pfizer. Gonna some shameless marketing for the book here, Life in Medicine. So I actually talked about what Dr. Shoemaker referred to, which is different angles that Big Pharma takes. They go to the doctor directly, and lately they've been going to the media and then going directly to the public, and then the public comes to the doctor and says, hey, I heard about this erectile dysfunction medication. Can I get some? Yeah. Okay. Dr. Speaker, thank you. It was a great talk. Thank you very much, and for all the work that you've done in terms of exposing the harms of the vaccine. Were you, when Moderna and Pfizer introduced the messenger RNA for COVID, what was your thought? Were you initially kind of skeptical about the technology, especially used against the coronavirus?
Yeah, I've been very skeptical since day one. As a scientist, I'm trained to ask detailed, good questions, look at all the facts of different angles, and then make an informed choice. Early on, a Pfizer sales rep told us, wait 12 months and then make your choice. And I knew in the first 6 that this was rubbish when it's being enforced on people. And 2, mRNA technology was A, rush, and B, it's a prodrug. It's not a vaccine. It's a vaccine which puts mRNA into our cells, which make our own cells express spike. Well, if things were one dose and stayed at the site, sure, that's one thing. And then it was cover up of the biodistribution and what's in it and the patents and they said 70-year FDA silence on stuff. And see if as soon as you bring out multiple doses of this, the first shot, it trains your immune system. If you see spike on a cell, it's bad and needs to be wiped out. And so it's just like if you paint a cell pink and say all pink cells are bad and need to be wiped out. The second and third shot paints more cells pink throughout the body, and therefore our own immune system is attacking itself, and it's a powerful autoimmune response which is causing harm.
So this is a question for the entire panel. So a comment and then a question. So in 1976, the American government and public health tried a similar scheme. I believe it was a swine flu. And after 25 deaths and some paralysis cases, there was a reporter that, when mainstream media was honest, an investigative reporter came out, put a report on these deaths, and they completely stopped the vaccine. They took it off the shelf. So it is now estimated, depending on the paper that you look at, that up to 17 million people may have died from this messenger RNA shot. 17 million people. Recent study by Dr. Mackes, autopsy study that's going to be published in The Lancet, looked at autopsy series of people that had died suddenly, and they found that 74% had had a recent messenger RNA shot. 74% of sudden deaths. So now we're talking about 17 million people. Dr. Peter McCullough has come on record as saying this should be criminal negligent theft, like basically murder.
And the 17 million figure should basically be doubled at this point, everybody.
So,
because the 17 million figure was a year and a half ago,
yeah.
and it's been a year and a half since. And the legitimate estimate is it's 17 to 20 million per year of excess deaths. I can speak to the 40% elevation in all-cause mortality that is happening in most vaccinated countries, including Canada. And for your all-cause mortality to elevate by 40% is a 1 in 3 billion year event. It should be that rare. A 10% increase in our all-cause mortality in our country should happen perhaps during a massive world war, might happen once every 200 years on the planet. But a 40%, and that's what we're in right now, a 40% increase in all-cause mortality. It's not from slipping on banana peels that have fallen out of spaceships.
Okay, so
it's from this friggin' vax. Pardon my French.
This is the burning question. I'd like you all to kind of weigh in on this one. So 1976, 25 deaths taken off the shelf. 2024, possibly 34 million deaths. Why aren't there negligent homicide charges? Why aren't these people in jail? How in the world can they get away with this?
Well, they're very smart and they're very rich, and they can control media circumstances, and they can control what politicians decide, and until politicians decide that this amount of carnage is unacceptable, I guess they'll get away with it. But I would politely ask all of our politicians and senior police officers and military people to look and think very carefully about numbers as severe as this. We don't deserve this as humanity. We don't deserve this, Dr. Guirgus. You know we don't. So that's my closing comment for the moment, that the numbers are huge, they're big, they're massive compared to those numbers of 5 to 25 people who died from swine flu, and it was enough to turn down a vaccine program that wasn't going to work anyway. Here we have a vaccine program that actually makes you more likely to get COVID. You're 3.5 to 5 times more likely to get COVID and go into ICU if you're 5 times vaccinated than if you're unvaccinated. Now all the studies have proven that it was a waste of time. It doesn't work for the purpose. So why would we continue to take something that does not work for the purpose, in fact, makes your situation and your likelihoods worse, and then has all these lethal effects as well? There is no rational reason on earth that these should continue. Every politician in every country in the world, and believe me, in Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and certain other countries, they're thinking really hard about it right now. And they have seen tremendous evidence that is telling them this should stop.
Sarah, any comments about how they're getting away with this?
Sorry?
Any comments about how they're getting away with
Well, I think
mass carnage?
to me, what I see is that, you know, this has been planned for a long time, as you said. But I think from decade to decade, they slowly have to change their way of thinking. They can't just, like in 1970, come up and say this. People wouldn't fall for it. They had to slowly disconnect us more and more from ourselves, from our truth, and so that we would accept it as being right. And so that's what I see. Like decade to decade, they moved the mark of everything. For example, cholesterol ranges, or they changed everything. And we've accepted it, and as we go, and now it's like we accept anything. And plus, they have more people in more places, and they're more ready, too, right? They got ready, took time for them to get ready for this. So it's been planned for a long time, and they implemented it slowly but surely. Most of us, a lot of us are programmed to not see through this.
If we go into gymnasia and hospital cafeterias and stuff and get jabbed for the new flu that they're going to say is coming after us, we're fools. We're absolute fools if we do it.
Well, they are trying to, again, there was a press release today, there's 4 cases of the bird flu. 4 cases, and they're starting to build up the alarm, you know, that 4 cases could spread.
What about peanut allergies? Like, they don't worry about that.
And hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, they work against any single-stranded mRNA virus circumstance, including this bird flu. So just have that available, take your vitamin D in good, strong amounts, protect your family. That's what I would suggest. Don't go near those injection sites.
Yes.
Any comments on how they
Well, as they rolled out things, the first thing they did is waived all liability. So, who's at fault? Is it the nurse that gave the jab, or the doctor which ordered it, or is it Pfizer who lied to Health Canada upon submitting approvals for it, or is it Health Canada who blindly approved it and did not hold Pfizer accountable?
Or is it also in large part Dr. Science? Remember Dr. Fauci said,
I am the science.
I am the science.
Anyone who questions Dr. Fauci questions science.
He's not a doctor.
Well, right. Actually, there was actually a Republican that was questioning him in one of the question periods, and she refused to call him doctor. She called him Mr. Fauci.
He's behaved in such a way with his non-ethics about beagle dogs and flea-infested brains, and anyone who's been doing that kind of stuff for 25 years clearly is a psychopath, and clearly would use anything and wouldn't care about using any number of things to potentially harm people. And we have the living proof of the last 5 years of what he's directed us to do. And Dr. David Martin has patent proof across the United States into China, into Europe. And these patent proofs prove that Fauci had control of this for 4 to 6 years before this was going on, and he was being spoken to. Things were coming into his ear from certain other entities that I can't specifically name, but I'm sure that Klaus Schwab, Tedros, and other elements, and Gates, had things to say to Fauci so that Fauci would go ahead and do this research. And all the research did was made a 2-directional thing happen. A kind of a germ with these bad genomes in it, and the suddenly instantly available vaccines. The vaccines would have not been instantly available if there hadn't been 4 years of research creating the vaccines. So Fauci was knowledgeable about both bits. He fed it over to China, and he did other elements within the States. And like all liars and like all guilty people, he did everything possible to make it appear not that way when he was questioned. And because he was inappropriately placed into the, what do we do about it? What am I going to do about this thing that I created? Oh, I guess I'll lie about it. So that's what we've all been victims of. We'll get away from the victimization. We're not going to be a victim of Dr. Fauci anymore and the people who spoke into his ear. It's over. Everyone out there in video land, this is over, but you have to be part of making it over. Do not accept the BS out of these people any longer.
Do we have Dr. Nagasi at all? Have we had any success with getting Dr. Nagasi? He's been very quiet. Daniel? Okay. So let me also remind ourselves and the audience that in Nuremberg, 36,000 doctors, or half the medical profession, actually joined the Nazi Party and were involved in genetic research, were involved in euthanasia, and they participated actively in this, the medical profession. Do you feel that doctors that have been involved in pushing the so-called vaccine messenger RNA shot, should they be culpable? Should they be responsible for the damage and injuries as well?
The most senior of the senior doctors should be culpable. The most senior of the senior people within the Public Health Agency of Canada and within Health Canada should be responsible. They should either be responsible for what they did do or for what they didn't do. If they just sat back and accepted research offered by Pfizer and by the Department of Defense in the United States and just accepted that without doing their own proper vetting, then they're guilty of many, many things. And they're guilty of lying to the average doctors of Ontario, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, and Quebec, and Nova Scotia. They lied their faces off as to what they've done to prove that it was safe. They said it was safe, but Health Canada did nothing to prove that it was safe. They still have done nothing to prove that it is safe. And I know I'm right in that regard because I've researched their research and it was basically non-existent. As Dr. David Speicher just showed us, when they found out that they were lied to by Pfizer and found out that a cancer promoter was within it, they just said, oh, geez, you shouldn't have lied to us, but now that you've lied to us, tell us what we should do about it.
Exactly.
You know, you stop listening to Pfizer the moment they lied to you the first time, right? So that's my commentary. I feel that mid-range and regular doctors who themselves were lied to are just guilty of, I don't know what they're guilty of, but it's not anywhere near as massive as people who were senior bureaucrats within the medical scientific community, because they were the ones that lied to every nurse, to every person, every doctor. But you know, we have this thing called good common sense, and people who were plumbers and lawyers and truckers and school teachers and people who gave up their careers because they had a suspicion. Real smart people, real smart people, real smart nurses. We knew, and we still know, and that's why we're here today. And thank you, Dr. Guirgus, for making this happen.
So, you mentioned Big Pharma. In the book I referred to, a former Pfizer executive who actually compares Big Pharma to the mob. He said that basically they have three common things. Number one is they make an obscene amount of money. Number two is death is a complication. If you're in the mob or you're in Big Pharma, medications are the third leading cause of death worldwide. And three, they know how to lobby and manipulate people.
And threaten and put pressure on them. There will be people within the medical community, those senior medical bureaucrats, who would literally have been blackmailed. I can absolutely guarantee you that people at those levels have been at some level probably blackmailed by the big money people in all this. The BlackRocks, the WHO, the World Economic Forum, and the other elements of people who go around and know how to blackmail people. This has all gone on. Because there's nothing in the science that says it's safe. Everything in the science shows that it's dangerous. It should be over.
It's actually in some ways really startling that they've been able to get away with it. Like at this level, like you can see maybe 100 deaths maybe they can cover up, but millions. Is it in the way that it kills and the absence of proper, thorough autopsy investigations? You think like that it's a silent death in a lot of cases, like myocarditis, where they seem perfectly healthy and then they have a sudden death. They don't do an autopsy, they'll never know. They was vaccinated, was he not vaccinated?
I'll invite both David and Sarah to speak right after me, but this business of 100 deaths is enough to stop something, because 100 deaths, my goodness, that's a real tragedy. As Joseph Stalin said, 100 deaths is a tragedy, but 20 million deaths is just a statistic. It's just a big statistic. And he got away with his 6 million and his 20 million deaths in Russia in the 30s and the 40s. Someone else is getting away with death levels in our world right now today. And it's up to many, many people to go out there and find it. James O'Keefe started it in a small way. James O'Keefe put something out that allowed me to learn what I learned in January of 2022. If I didn't learn what I learned in January of 22, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So we thank that investigative journalist, James O'Keefe, for finding out how that internally within the U.S. government and the U.S. military, people were in the know, and they knew already that ivermectin was the best drug. It should be used if ever there was a coronavirus. They knew it, and then it got hidden. Please, Sarah, speak to the point, the general point that we've just asked.
Sarah, do you think, so the question about how they got away with it, and then the second question I would have for the panel, and you can start answering first, is do you think eventually they'll be held accountable? Eventually we're going to see some arrests and true accountability for negligent homicide?
You know, I was really thinking that that wasn't going to happen, but I'm starting to think that maybe it will, and I'm seeing justice, like I'm worst case scenario, so I've been like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to get out of this. But lately, I'm starting to be like, oh my God, there's light, and this is going to be great.
What encouraged you? What did you see that made you think that?
Well, I'm seeing it more on mainstream, so
right.
that's the thing, right? So I was completely defamed by mainstream, so I was like, we're never gonna see it on there. Like I really can't believe like mainstream is actually talking about excess deaths. I was really happy when I saw that. I mean, it's in the UK mostly, but yeah, it'll come over. Like it's starting, it's coming. I saw a few nurses win like their cases with their vaccine and stuff. So I'm really excited about what's coming and what we're gonna create.
And I think, I agree with you. And I think one of the things I've seen that's encouraging is aggressive vaccine proponents are now turning against the vaccine, even like very liberal, tyrannical reporters like Como, for example. So he's starting to talk about the side effects that he's had from the vaccination.
Right.
And he was a pusher. And we're starting to see some people actually literally come out and apologize for the way they shamed and they ridiculed those that didn't take the vaccine. You know, it's interesting. There's a comedian that talks about this, how initially the propaganda was so strong that people that got vaccinated shamed the people that did the research. They said, you're gonna do your own research? Like, yeah. Like, they shamed a person for doing their own research before injecting something into their body. And this comedian goes on to say, it's like, if you go to buy a car, they say, you're gonna research your car? Like, why? Just ask the salesman. He'll tell you all about the car. So it's like, just ask public health, who's making millions of dollars off the vaccine. Just has to trust them. They trust the science. You know? So, that's us.
Yeah.
I thought that was being asked you for a second there. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the audience to see if you have any questions for our panelists. Dr. Speicher, I'm sorry. Please.
On that point, the more we look at these vaccines, the more aspects we find can cause harm. You've got DNA there, you've got high levels of RNA, you've got ribosomal shifting, you've got RNA, DNA hybrids, and so the more you look, the more it's seen that this is done on purpose.
That's a great point, and so that leads me to the question: why? Why are they putting in DNA fragments in there?
And two, the entire reverse orth is so optimized. It could have only have been done by AI. It is that risk.
With what objective do you think? What objective?
To make a full reverse orth.
Wow.
To encode for something else.
So our very DNA, God created DNA. They're basically completely sabotaging
So on
our
that
DNA.
point is she asked, you've got the last movement that's round. If you encode forward, you get spike. If you encode backwards, it gives big growing like fibrous things. All of those white dots and stuff found in people is all being encoded in the Pfizer. And that is so finely tuned. It could have only have been that precise if it's designed via AI.
Can I just speak to support what Dr. Speicher has just said? This is very important for people to realize. Plasmids, as Dr. Speicher just said, are circular structures, tiny little circular structures. And when Health Canada says that there's an acceptable amount of DNA that can be up to such and such an amount, that was only acceptable if it was not inside a plasmid. These acceptable levels that they talk about is a little bit of debris or detritus that might be allowed in a certain product. It would never be purposefully encoded in something that can take it into your brain and be active in your brain and in your brain cell nucleus. And in that same little spaceship, it takes it through the mother's bloodstream, into the placenta, into the baby, and into the baby's brain, because it's in a little spaceship called a plasmid. So this is what's about planning, right, David? You don't get these microscopic events to happen. You don't get this microscopic spaceship carrying things to all of the most sacred tissues in the body. The bone marrow, the brain, the fetus and the fetal brain, and the ovaries and the testicles. Those are the 5 areas that these things go to the best. The testicles, the ovaries, the fetal brain, the human brain. This is a no-brainer in terms of was it planned?
And the heart, Chris.
And the heart. The heart, strangely enough, for all the stuff that happens to the heart, it's kind of easier to get to the heart because it doesn't have to cross a blood-brain barrier. It doesn't have to cross a testicular barrier or an ovary barrier or placenta barrier. The heart is in many ways easy to get to. But once you put it inside DNA, inside plasmids, and not just average healthy DNA, DNA made by nefarious scientists, DNA with bad genomes within them. The worst of the worst, and they put it inside a spaceship. Last little point about the spaceships. The spaceships themselves, plasmids and or lipid nanoparticles, they were only ever approved. Before COVID, the only people they would give plasmids or lipid nanoparticles, even if they were empty, they were only allowed to be given to people who had 5 months or less to live. It was only allowed in legitimate science to be given experimentally to a person that had less than 5 months to live because it was proven that lipid nanoparticles and plasmids are themselves so toxic to people that they should not be for average use in average circumstances. Has anybody at CTV or CBC been telling you that? It's the truth. Nobody wants to tell you the truth.
So we have one more comment, and then we're going to have 5 minutes for audience questions.
And to the point, are they getting all away with this?
Doctor, we lost Dr.
What happened? I lost sound.
Keep it here. Come back.
Is it there? Come on. I lost sound. Okay, I'm here. I'm still talking. The whole avian influenza thing has come on just as COVID has gone down as a diversion to, there's all these COVID deaths from the vaccine. COVID's over. And then look at this, and it's to distract the people from the past to what's to come.
Do you think they're going to try and say the COVID vaccine deaths are all a result of this new virus? Like trying to kind of hide it, basically. It's all it's all a big scam. They just feeds one to another. Okay, so Ed has borrowed his mic. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? And Ed will come to you with the mic. The gentleman there, Ed, please. We have about 5 minutes. So you can address a question to a specific panel member or to the entire panel?
Yes.
But we'll try to just answer one of us only.
It's not failing. It's not failing. So let me take this one. Go for it.
Okay,
Could we have you come on?
Okay, if you have a question, if you could just come closer to the stage, please. We have a mic here for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Come up here. I know. Last year, yeah, it's a range issue.
Hi there. Oh. Hey.
There we go. You're on.
Okay. So the question is to the physicians, basically, all of you. There is a kind of confusion, really, in the public with regard to the shedding aspect. Michael Leadham, the ex-VP of Pfizer, said, and he made a study with his colleagues about a year ago, and he found out that 80% of the vials were placebo, whereas about 20% were with the actual toxic material. Now, still, we are talking about the risk ratio of 1 to 5, right? So nobody here in the public would say that they would embark on a plane that has 20% of being fatal, or you would buy a car that has 20% of being fatal injury. So my question here is is there a way today to know what happens to the 80% of the other vials that were given as placebo? Are there any other toxins there? Because we have family members, we have friends, we have partners that got the vaccines, and presumably 4 out of 5 got 80%. They got, the placebo. Is there a way for us to know why there has no study done? Simple study, by the way, because they could have done pretty much the same study by themselves. I don't know why Michael Leadham didn't do that. I asked Peter McCullough the same question in front of hundreds of people over Zoom, and he couldn't answer that. I don't know what is the reason. It's not budget, because it's a very simple test. So what is the reason? We need to know, because we interact with people on a daily basis. This is something that interests most of the public, really. So this is a question really to you. Yeah.
And you're wanting to know the reason that, what are you wanting to know the reason for or of? You said a lot of things. I don't understand what reason.
The reason is that if we are interacting with people, is there anything else in those placebo? First of all, they need to be able to detect people that got the placebo if they have other toxins or not. Because if they have other detrimental materials in the injections, even though they were placebo, maybe we're subject to those sheddings as well. So this is one thing, why there is no simple test to detect that. Second is that we are interacting with people on a daily basis. We need to know this kind of information. After 3.5 years from the rollout of the vaccine, it's about time we know that.
Well, you're not going to know it because they didn't care who knew what. They cared and chose to give out separate strains. Denmark had a certain segment of the population, 1/3 got salt water. Could we have actual microphones that work?
Yeah, I think we were losing some of the sound.
Keep going.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Keep going.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're back there.
Okay. So thank you very much for your question, sir. Absolutely. But the reason that it's hard to discern any of these things is because the whole reason for there being true placebo, salt water, the whole reason that there were weak amounts of mRNA versus high amounts, the people who made this crap wanted to study it. They wanted to know what 100% dosing would do to people. Like the people I spoke of there at Invercargill, they all got the same lot number. All 100 people were dead within 1 year. That was clearly, obviously, a high-dose circumstance for those people in Invercargill, New Zealand. So again, the people studying it, the people making use of dose response, they're the bad guys. They've got all the lot data, they've got all the information. It's for them to understand, it's for them to do. And governments haven't chosen to figure out the same things because the governments are too obscure and non-scientific and they don't care. And plus they're being led by the nose by the WEF and the bad guys who made this. So it's for the bad guys who made this. They've got all the knowledge in the world. They've done everything possible to make individuals and governments not know anything. That's my opinion.
I have two comments. One is there's clearly hot vials. There's a recent Ontario hospital where 3 anesthesiologists died in their 50s. I don't know if you're familiar with that. 3 ordinarily, like previously healthy anesthesiologists, 3 of them died. And we now know that at least 99% of practicing doctors are vaccinated. Because those that chose not to be vaccinated either stopped practicing or got their license taken away or lost their hospital privileges.
So on that point, I've looked at 38 vials of 32 lots, compared loads to theirs. All of the PBS purple top Pfizer vials had the worst effects, up to 50% adverse events, and it's probably buffered base, and therefore they switched to Raris. 2, all of the early vials had to be diluted first, and many of them weren't before giving them to folk. All of the current ones don't. And 2, all of the old vials could not be studied because Health Canada kept track of every vial. They'd show up, they count what's been dropped off, what's been picked up, work out where the things gone. All of the vials in my work has been like Star Wars Rogue One. You go in, someone gives you things, you go and test it. And it's been done to ensure scientists cannot look at the old files to find out what's in them.
Cover up, essentially.
Exactly.
There's no,
Michael Legan said that they covered all the vials, all the batches, and they concluded that 80% were placebo.
So there's actually a whistleblower nurse that had all that information, and she did come out and say there's 3 different formulations. One is straight placebo, and you could tell by the number of the code on the vial. And another one was basically laced with messenger RNA. And the third one was the oncology one, the cancer producing chemicals were in the third one. And she said that they knew that. They knew that. So anyways,
in any case, it's all unethical. I think we should have another questioner shortly so that other questions can be asked.
We're just about out of time. We have time for one more question, and then we need to wrap this up for...
I got one for the doctors, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I seen Dr. Trozzi speaking a few weeks ago out in just outside Winnipeg. He says shedding is very real. He strongly suggested 3-day water fast, and I tried the detox. So what are your opinions on that?
My quick medical opinion would be that Dr. Trozzi's comments are totally consistent with what the World Council for Health has been saying and FLCCC.net has been saying for 2.5 years. All you need to go is to go to those 2 websites, utilize aspects of autophagy or intermittent fasting or consistent fluid fasting, right? Those things are terribly helpful. So too are some of the medications they recommend. But ultimately, there's still going to be a hormonal effect. If your own ovaries are causing you to have strange periods because of the vax and the damage to your ovaries, well, then the hormonal changes of that are also going to exude out to other people. It's not just the virus itself or RNA itself, it's hormones. So everything gets transmitted. Speaking of hormones, when people were on treatment for cancer treatment, it was normal. They would tell you, stay away from the family, use separate bathrooms. That's so your hormonal treatment and chemotherapy treatment doesn't exude out from your own breath or your own urine, so it affects your family. So it's always possible, it's always been medically known. You have to be careful if you've got some toxic stuff in you, protect others by eliminating aspects of connection. But can things still happen optimistically? Yes. Can treatments like Dr. Trozzi mentioned, including autophagy, which is a form of intermittent fasting, are they helpful to you and therefore to the loved ones close to you? Yes, they are. But you've got to dig, you've got to find. But by the way, everybody, why are we having to do all this work? Because a-holes above us, because the government above us didn't care to learn real science. That's why we're having to do all this, because they chose to be blind. They chose.
One last question. I have a very brief response, and we have to wrap it up.
Sure. Thank you, panel. I'll make this quick. Last week I went into a local shopping store in North, and I spoke to one of the pharmacists, and I said, "Do you have ivermectin?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, what is the strength of those?" I said, "It's 4 milligrams." And I know pre-COVID they were 12 milligrams. So, but I didn't ask to look at the insert, so I really don't know. Like if the insert is the same as pre-COVID, so if you have any knowledge on the insert of it.
I think 4 milligrams.
Well, there's always been 3 milligrams, 6 milligrams, and 12, so if there happens to be 4, there's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, we can't really get into dosing and stuff. It's a very simple, easy medicine to take safely, but I'm not going to get into dosing. Hey, because I can't prescribe it. No doctor in Canada can prescribe it. What a country we're living in, right? Is it time to write your MP? Is it time to write your public health people and say, stop this? People in Pakistan can have this. They can get it without prescription. Yeah. Canadians should at least be able to get it with prescription tomorrow.
Thank you very much, and thank you, audience, for your attention. Thank you, panelists, David Speicher, Sarah, wonderful warrior, nurse warrior, Dr. Chris Shoemaker, and Dr. Nagasi was very quiet, but...
One more quick question.
Okay, I can answer. Technically, we're out of time, but...
Gentlemen, very quickly. Buy and sell GC.ca. Anyone in the Canadian public can look up national stockpile or numbers on hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. During COVID, we learned that there were 16 million hydroxychloroquine tablets in the government national stockpile that weren't used. On whose authority, who was blocking ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine at that level?
I don't know.
We don't know. But as activists, we know that ATIPs, access to information requests, freedom of information requests, we really underuse those things because we could have got to the heart of things a lot faster.
Thank you.
Well, keep being active, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. And everyone, please remember that everyone fighting this war has sacrificed. Pardon me? I'm sorry, we're out of time. We're going to try and keep on schedule. Is there another panel discussion maybe tomorrow? Kelly? Okay, there'll be another panel if you're here tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much. And remember, if you can support the work of these freedom fighters, the Dream Team, Dr. Trozzi, Dr. Speicher, Sarah has a disciplinary hearing. If you can help her with that as well, her legal fees. And I'll be in the back for about 10 minutes. I have another obligation. If you'd like to come, discuss anything, ask any questions, and incentive pricing on the books, I'll sign them for you.
Thank you so much, Emad.
Thank you. All right.
Sarah. Check. Picture yourself. Perfect. Everybody, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm not going to hold you up, and we're an hour behind schedule. But tomorrow we will have the virtual speakers, Bob, Kirk Reise, and some of our whistleblowers come in and speak to everybody. What I do want to touch on is that we brought everybody together because we do have a solution that we want to put forward. Imagine a world where these doctors and nurses were able to have all the authority over creating our healthcare policies. Imagine a world where our teachers and our parents would decide on the curriculum for our children, where corporate suits, foreign interference would not exist. Imagine the every single day factory worker deciding on our minimum wage. Imagine equality under the law for our natives with our Canadians together as one nation. If you want to learn more about this, we've got a foolproof plan that has proven to work. So a year and a half ago, and you will be introduced to a friend of mine who I implanted a strategy through into the country of Panama. And just 2 weeks ago, the country of Panama has elected an independent majority and kicked the WEF out. So that is part one of the strategy, but we've got part two, and I am willing to put on a full presentation to put this strategy out to everyone, and so are my partners and our teammates, and I hope you will join us again tomorrow. The doors will open at noon. We've got a media panel with some pretty heavy hitters, including some from the mainstream media that will be up here on the stage, so you'll be able to ask questions, and that will be interesting. And they'll be joined with, of course, our Ontario sweetheart, Jody Ledgerwood and Chris Black. And then in the evening, we've got one heck of a law panel. And that will include people like Chris Weisdorf, who I can see in the audience, as well as Daniel Freiheit from Lions Advocacy Law, and he's also the brother of the well-known Viva Frey. And there's a few others that are going to be in as well, and I've got a very special guest that'll be live streaming. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You want to find out? You're going to have to show up. But thank you all very much. We are the change. We are. The authority in this country belongs to the people. And democracy is a good thing when it actually exists. So come on back tomorrow, and I will show you how to do it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for coming. And just a reminder, these events do cost money. We're putting it on for free. We did bring in some food for you to eat. Richie was sitting here. If you feel it in your heart to make some donations, that would be lovely. But we are back tomorrow. Legal panel, media panel, a few more really great speakers. Hopefully technology will work tomorrow. We had 4 more speakers tonight, and I apologize. Dr. Nagasi's in Japan, so he was coming in virtual, and technology doesn't always want to cooperate with us. But we do hope you'll join us tomorrow. We start at 1 o'clock, doors open at noon. Feel free to tell your friends, come on in, we'll have some bits and bites again for you guys to eat. It'll be a longer day tomorrow, 2 more panels, excellent speakers. Thank you for coming out. Donations are there with Richie, and have a great night, and may you all have an uneventful ride home. Thank you.
Okay, so the technical difficulties were happening, but we're back in place. Guys, I would like to introduce you to someone who's pretty important to me. He's a very close personal friend. He's also a former member of the Canadian military and a ranger, and one of the country's biggest whistleblowers, who is also oppressed from telling his story. Oh, thank God we got you. Hi, Kirk.
Hey, hello. I'm hoping you're still there. Basically, I'll just give you the story. I joined the Rangers in 2010 to help protect Canadian sovereignty. The Rangers were formed in 1947 to protect Canadian sovereignty, and also our main goal was to train survival skills, which I was very good at. Unfortunately, I noticed there was a lot of fraud going on. Basically, I caught them stealing millions of dollars through our cash payments, and I voiced my opinion to patrol commanders, and I faced immediate reprisal. I tried to report it to my superiors, and they didn't listen. I tried to report it to the RCMP, they didn't listen. This was in 2015. And then in 2018, I had all the documentation where I had a full-fledged fraud investigation going on. And I tried to report it to Trudeau, actually, and they ignored me because the people that committed the fraud were the chief of the Laurent Band, Chief Captain McPherson, and her husband, Jim Pearson, the patrol commander. And they outright told me that they had to be in charge of the patrol to get $16 million from Trudeau for a wellness center. And I said, well, you have to win the election. Because in the Rangers, we have elections every 2 years to stop fraud, which might be a good idea in the Canadian government. But either way, they had to take elections. They were deemed illegal, but they still kept me out. They ended up getting $60 million. And then the chief ended up being a Liberal nominee. And I was trying to find everything. Now I got okay. That was weird, but either way, yeah, all these things just really distract me. This whole thing is weird, but so they have to take to that thing. They got $60 million. I tried to report what I'm doing. Basically, it involved a truck band chief who was a Liberal nominee. And I drove to Edmonton, CFD to report my findings, and they couldn't take it. They said it's above their pay grade, come back another time. Either way, I drove across the Abbotsford border to seek asylum. And this was in February of 2019. I didn't stop at the gates, I drove through the gates with my 5-year-old son in a Boyle 2017 Denali in the hopes of getting asylum and getting my story out to solve this problem. I had guns, I had survival gear, smoke grenades, rations. Basically, it was like a survival ready to go to war, and multiple caliber rounds. And they turned me back. They said they had no asylum for people like me. So I said, well, you have to arrest me then and put my son in foster care until we got this straightened out, and they wouldn't do that either. They asked, well, why would we have to arrest you? I said, well, because I have these guns in my truck, and I've been drinking, and I'm on medication, and I have doctor's orders for evaluation. So, major alarms there. Instead, they took all the guns and they dropped them all back off on the Canadian side, and I drove across where they interrogated me and my son. And they, the first thing they did on the Canadian side is give me guns or alcohol, and I was like, in the truck, and they said no. And they said, well, wait, nothing inside here. So they took my son away, and they questioned him. They said, well, how can you, what's going on? I showed them some documents. Then all of a sudden, they told the RCMP they didn't know what to do with me. But I couldn't prove that it was my son, so they phoned a friend of mine, and he verified that I had a son. It was on the phone. They gave him back, and the police said, well, you can't be driving around with all these guns and stuff. And I said, well, then deal with me, arrest me, and let's get this started. And this is the American and the Canadian side in that February 2019. Well, instead they gave me everything back, shook my hand, and said, we're all in this together. I said, it might need me. That's how I knew I was really screwed, So for the last 5 years, I've been living in that remote island by Bella Bella, trying to get my story out. Unfortunately, when they found out where I was 6 months later, they had me arrested under the Mental Assault Act and taken away from my 5-year-old son and sent to a mental hospital. Inside that mental hospital, they were forcing me to take antipsychotics, which I said I didn't want to take any because I'm not psychotic. They said, well, you have to, you're never going to leave. Well, fortunately for me, I was recording everything. I recorded the phone calls, I recorded the doctors, the nurses, and I've been doing that for many years because I knew this was coming. And I was, trying to do my job of protecting things, which is at risk now from inside, from Trudeau and every other political party that I've encountered. I've contacted them all. Started with the Green Party, actually. Elizabeth May was the first one to call the RCMP on me. I've been dealing with mainstream media. If you look on my Facebook under Kirk Reise, that's Kirk Reise, Look up, Google Kirk Reise, or go on my Facebook, there's lots of evidence is there, lots of recordings are there from Rachel Blaney, MP from the area, Veterans Whip for NDP. Taylor Backrash, he actually came here and I met him a few times, and he's just all these people are too scared to speak up and help me to get my evidence into the proper authorities. The police won't investigate it because they say, well, everything you say is questionable because we arrested you and sent you to a mental hospital, so you have mental problems. After 5 years, I was finally able to meet actual people because of COVID. I wasn't able to meet these people. They accept me as being 111% mentally disabled. So they gave me an extra $279 a month for my pension, or my disability, sorry. And fortunately for me, they also said I have a great illness, which is my life is going to drastically cut short. 33% more likely to be shot by RCMP, 33% more likely to kill myself, and 33% more likely to harm somebody else. But I'm not suicidal or homicidal, and I made that perfectly clear. But they said I have a great illness, which is paranoid schizophrenia, which I don't have. And I'm not mentally disabled. Well, I got a little bit of problems, but not that bad. So I was able to pass up my civilian, and that's why I've been able to live. I've tried so many politicians. I've tried the Public Integrity Commissioner Kemp. He was nominated by Trudeau, so good luck with that. They said they can't deal with my story, even though I'll take the extreme prize. The Auditor General won't look into it. Julia Grateful won't. I started with her back in 2019, and she was the assistant to the Minister of National Defense. Harjit Saxon's involved. I got letters from Trudeau and Harjit, and many other politicians all saying it's not their problem because they're too cowardly to step up and do the right thing. I wasn't expecting to do a quick, I just only expected to do a quick 10-minute speech here, but I've been trying for over 5 years living in exile to find an ethical politician, RCMP, or mainstream media, and I can't find anybody. I have enough in Curly, over 100 RCMPs, over 100 politicians, and easily 100 mainstream media, including recorded phone calls. Nothing's disputable, yet they say I'm crazy. And that's what they do to a lot of people. A lot of people come forward to me and say, Kirk, this has happened to me. And I say, well, where's your evidence? And they say, well, I'm telling you right now, I was like, that's not evidence, that's just you grounded. Which it sounds like I don't know a lot, but I have the evidence. There's just no one to give it to. I've been trying to get doctors. They say only civilian review committee, well, they don't do anything. They locked my file for 2 years. All of my stuff, it doesn't expire. There's no statute of limitations on national security, and all of my stuff is national security. Trudeau still goes to Laurent, Saskatchewan, the murder capital of Canada, to sit with his corrupt chief and talk about truth and reconciliation. Well, where's my truth and reconciliation? Like I can put so many of these people in military prison, because when they did that fake election in 2019, they were all in uniform on exercise. The commanding officer told me, Kirk, you have to report this. And that was my last military task, and I'm still on it. Unfortunately, they've all retired or been released or disappeared, is what they said to some people. They're gone. When they listened for me for a year, they said I can't run forever. I can't hide forever. Why would they say that? Plus the death threats to my family, I was able to come back because I never gave up, and I have lots of skills, but a lot of people don't have the skills in Canada. I don't think they have a clue what's coming. And if my story would have gotten out in 2018 like it should have, it would have changed the whole output of COVID. We definitely would have had a different prime minister. We definitely would have had more exposure to the truck, police, and the NSM. It could have taken a lot of lives, and every day that my story doesn't go, it's killing people. And that's what bothers me the most, is I can't get anyone, like even the Chris Davies, they won't say my story. Derek, they won't say my story. Ezra Levac, he's known my story since 2019. He won't say anything about it. I'm not asking for money, I'm not asking for donations. They seized over $350,000 of mine. And they lost all the records. Canada Revenue lost all the records. I have all the records, but do you think there's someplace I can give them? That'll take them? Nope. They just take the money. They don't have people that give it back. It's all recorded. So again, just look on my Facebook or YouTube or Google Kirk Reise, K-I-R-K-R-I-E-S-E. And yeah, like I was told I had 10 minutes, so I think that's probably about 10 minutes. If there are any questions, I don't even know how to chat because I don't know if anyone's listening. But my phone number is 639-994-9210. I've done over 40 interviews. Even with Shadow Davis, he said, Kirk, your stories, you're too dangerous. You're a very dangerous man because of what I know. He's got enough problems. But he did interview me March 1st. It did Jason Levine, July 17th. But then they all blocked me because then they asked, well, what else you got? I said, well, I got this on all these politicians. And unfortunately, it's their political friends. A lot of people said, Kirk, we can't put you on our show because you insult our friends. Well, one thing off here in the media, get better friends. I don't judge. I'm just telling the truth. And I can prove everything I say. I super appreciate Kelly getting me on here. Maybe next time I'll have a little better setup, but, I'm just trying to get my story done and be done to service to Canada. Like, I could have a good life if I didn't have this hanging over me. I swore I was back Canada. I'm still serving, so I was never legally released. That's 14 years of me trying to help Canadians, and I can't get hardly any responses. But, yeah, maybe I can chat tomorrow if there's any questions. I'll turn my, the computer back on and see if anyone can hear anything. But I'll let you go for now. I'm still trying to help Canada. Have a good evening.
Follow Truth in Plain Sight